let's do the thing. So welcome in, everybody, to the first live, fully inflated football video podcast of the 2021 NFL season. We are going to be recapping week 1 today and getting into the mailbag. I want to thank everybody joining me live here. All super chat questions, I should be able to see them at the end of the show, but if you have questions, if you're not submitting questions on Patreon, which is a way to submit questions for the show, all super chat questions here for the show, I'm going to try to answer at the end of the show during the mailbag portion. So if you have questions, feel free to hold on to them towards the end of this show. But yeah, it's going to be a week 1 recap show here today, trying to sort through what was real, what maybe we don't want to overreact to, just recapping game by game. I do want to take a second to tell you guys about my friends at Magic Spoon. I want to thank them for sponsoring the show today. Magic Spoon has figured out how to offer us the same tasty cereals that we used to have as kids, but without the carbs, higher in protein, without the sugar. Magic Spoon has become a part of my daily routine as I try to get in shape for my wedding. And I can't recommend it enough. I reached out to them because it's a product I believe in, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So you can now save $5 on your first purchase of Magic Spoon on magicspoon.com if you use promo code FranchiseGuy, and you'll support the show in the process. I also would like to thank my patrons who really bring this show to you guys. This show would not exist without my Patreon, where you can support the show but also get exclusive content. I literally, about 30 minutes, uploaded my Week 2 NFL picks there as exclusive content there on Patreon. Hoping to get a film breakdown up as well as soon as frickin' NFL Game Pass gives us the footage. About to cause an uproar over that, but thank you, everybody on Patreon, for your amazing support. If you want to become a part of the Patreon game, you can also submit questions to the show there on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, and we are going to get into the mailbag from Patreon at the end of the show. One last little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to be heading out of town tomorrow through Tuesday. I'm actually going on my bachelor party this weekend, and then we are going to the Lambeau Monday night game in Lambeau, Packers-Lions. So I'm going to be out of town, which is going to disrupt the weekly schedule a little bit. So no studs and duds this week, unfortunately. And then next week you can expect power rankings probably on Wednesday, maybe even Thursday. Podcast should be next Thursday. Again, no studs and duds next week. And then weekly picks will also make it next week. So studs and duds will not start on the channel until after week 3. So you guys can look forward to that. It's going to be a pretty epic show, though, because we're going to have 3 weeks to react to, a lot of players to analyze, and we'll have a really good look at, that first 3 weeks of who's really standing out and who's maybe regressing this year. So it'll be a really fun video when we get to that, but you're going to have to wait a little while, unfortunately. So let's get into the weekly recap. And I just kind of went down the pecking order of when these games happened, with the exception of Denver at the New York Giants. I haven't gotten to the second half of that game, so I pushed that towards the end. And San Francisco at Detroit, I actually haven't even watched yet, because I do like to go back and at least watch the condensed version of all of these games. So those games got pushed towards the back burner there. So let's start with Thursday Night Football. Dallas at Tampa Bay. Dallas losing by 2 points, a very, very good game. And this was just the ultimate, season kickoff. Let's go. Great quarterback play, back and forth all night. Just good, exciting football. It was so good to have it back. And let's start with the Tampa Bay side of things. It was pretty much everything we all expected, and if you're not a Bucs fan, it's everything we all feared, and that is Tom Brady looks even better than ever. He does not look like he's aging. The offense, really with a full offseason to prepare, with Antonio Brown in the mix. We were all kind of like, okay, is Antonio Brown going to look like a 33-year-old, or is he going to be old Antonio Brown? Because there was certainly flashes last year that Antonio Brown was, he still had it. He just wasn't a full focal part of that offense. And between him and Gronk, who had a full offseason to really get in shape, woo, man, that Bucs offense was cooking. Now, it was against the Cowboys defense, and Tom Brady was under almost no pressure all night, and those corners couldn't really run with these receivers, but that's part of the deal here, is that offensive line is incredible. Tom Brady is so good at navigating the pocket and buying time, and those receivers are going to get open against pretty much any secondary in the league. So even in a game where they lost, 2 fumbles and another interception off of a Leonard Fournette, failed catch, even in a game with, I believe it was 3 turnovers, right? They still were cooking and was plenty to win the game. As for Dallas, they did a good job to capitalize on some of those mistakes and keep this game close. Dak looked really good, proving that he is it fair to say, a top 5 processing quarterback in the NFL. Just his ability to kind of minimize a rush by getting rid of the ball quickly when he needs to, letting those receivers, let's just say putting those receivers in a position to succeed with accuracy and timing, and just having that consistency on a snap-to-snap basis. He is incredibly efficient, not unlike the guy on the other side of the ball in Tom Brady. You could nitpick a couple spots here and there. The deep out to CeeDee Lamb was a little behind him. He chucked one up into double coverage before half. He wasn't perfect, but he was damn good, and it was really fun to see Dak Prescott back going head-to-head with Tom Brady. It was just an all-around, I think, positive vibes for both teams. Even if you're a Cowboys fan, I feel like you're not even that disappointed with this loss because you got to see the offense look really good. And honestly, the Cowboys defense, it hung in there. Those corners are going to be a concern, but the front seven, I think, is much improved, and you hope the coaching is going to be better as well. So just kind of a positive takeaway for both teams. The last little note here is Sean Murphy Bunting went down with kind of a gruesome arm injury. It sounds like he avoided that being a season ender, which is good news for the Bucs because they're going to be in the playoffs. It's just a matter of getting hot and healthy entering the playoffs. But that is going to be a slight setback. They're going to have to lean on Ross Cockrell, who's a good veteran, good fourth piece to have there, but a potential weak point until Sean Murphy Bunting can get back. And that was one of 2 position groups for the Bucs that I said coming into the year, they really have to stay healthy because they have like $1 million in cap space, and it's not like the free agent market is swimming with quality corners. So definitely something to monitor is the continued health of the Bucs. But overall, I would say just a positive outlook on both squads. And Dallas has to go to the LA Chargers this weekend, which is going to be another freaking awesome football game. Get to see Dak go against Herbert. These young quarterbacks in the NFL right now are exceptional. Next up, we have Arizona at Tennessee. Weird game, surprising game. I don't know. It wasn't so surprising from Arizona. I think Tennessee was a little more surprising. The one thing that I did find really interesting about this game is, we're fresh off of my deep dive series where I spend so much time pointing out like the pivotal points of each team, like the new things that changed and the pieces on each team that have a lot of variance. And I think for both of these teams, Arizona and Tennessee, we saw those pivotal points like go either all the way in one direction or all the way in the other direction. And for Tennessee, it was in the bad direction. For Arizona, it was in the good direction. And it was like really the key pivotal offseason moves or pivotal young players stepping up for Arizona and disappointing for Tennessee. So in Arizona's case, you have the 2 pass rushers that really were not a part of this team last year, J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones especially. And the question was, can this pass rush really be great, or are Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt going to look maybe more like, names as opposed to superstars? And J.J. Watt was pretty good, still pretty, where am I going with this? He's still very good as a pass rusher, but some of those plays against the run, like he still has that physical dominance as that 3 technique and 4-eye and edge, like just all of it that he brought to from a run defense standpoint. But Chandler Jones in this game, man, he was dominant. Defensive player of the week, I would think. He had to be for the NFC. I mean, he had 5 sacks, and they were real sacks. And he was beating Taylor Lewan in a bunch of different ways, hump moves, bend around the edge, power, you name it. Chandler Jones, sprinkling cash towards the press box, towards the front office for the Cardinals, saying, "Pay me, I'm back." get me that money that I wanted. What a statement game from Chandler Jones, but not just for him. That was huge for this defense because we kind of knew Arizona was going to move the ball, but even then, some of the pivotal points for the Cardinals' offense stepped up too, specifically Rondale Moore, who did bring that juice in the bubble screen game that I had talked about being a big step for them. And Christian Kirk, man, how long have I been saying on this channel, get Christian Kirk inside the formation. He is not a perimeter receiver, and he's done what he can as a perimeter deep threat for that team, but he is a slot guru and has so much explosiveness. Roasted Elijah Molden for a deep ball out of the slot. He looks to be like a much improved version of that slot receiver. Between him and Rondale Moore, like, I'm sorry, Larry Fitzgerald, but this is a massive upgrade for Kyler Murray to have that explosiveness out of the slot. I think this offense was being held back by Larry Fitzgerald. I've been saying it for 2 years, and some people criticize me for it, but hello, like, yeah, put speed in the slot and let Kyler Murray take advantage of it. It was really fun to see. Kyler Murray was so explosive. Did have a bad pick, but you know, for the most part, Kyler Murray was an MVP caliber player in that game. The play where he extended the play and basically did the Madden thing where he makes 4 guys miss in the backfield and finds a guy downfield, stops outside the pocket. Like, unbelievable game for Kyler Murray. Cannot wait to continue watching him. I personally think Kyler Murray, I mean, Mahomes obviously, but Kyler Murray might be the most fun player to watch behind Patrick Mahomes. So really just like everything for Arizona that we looked at being question marks. And we didn't even mention Isaiah Simmons, who looked good, and Byron Murphy in the secondary, who were other question marks. Everything for Arizona was like, yes, 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 looks great. And it's week 1. We don't want to overreact, but man, that looked like a Super Bowl contending team for the Arizona Cardinals. They got to take on the Vikings this week, which will be a good one. As for Tennessee, pretty much everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Defensively, they did not look like any of those moves they made were strides in the right direction. The pass rush was virtually non-existent. I think they had single-digit pressures in this game. The secondary was a wreck. And the offense, with Todd Downing in there as offensive coordinator, they clearly just didn't have the same preparation, play calling. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it was in week 1. Maybe we'll find out as the season goes on, but you know, it just, the offense was just off. Julio Jones was not better than Corey Davis, not in week 1, and I got tons of crap for saying that in my deep dive, that there's a chance that Julio Jones is a downgrade to Corey Davis, who was incredible last year. Not saying that's going to happen, but week 1 it was like they kind of needed that route running number 2 receiver next to A.J. Brown, and Julio didn't bring that to the table. Byron Murphy was kind of all over Julio. So it was for sure a disappointing start for the Titans season. I'm definitely worried about them because how long have I been saying that Ryan Tannehill just, he is helped so much by the system around him, and when all of that kind of falls apart, you get that, which is a fine quarterback, but nothing close to the top 10 guy that people have been selling on Twitter for the whole summer. He did have one beautiful drive before half. Ryan Tannehill couldn't keep it up into the second half, but yeah, that's my outlook for the Titans. I'm not selling, maybe I'm selling them, but I'm not like overreacting. I'm not ruling them out. The division is still a mess. The Houston Texans are currently in first place, but yeah, not looking great for the Tennessee Titans. And that's that game. Jacksonville at Houston. We're going to stay in the AFC South here. This was a shocker. There was 2 games that were huge surprises this week, and that was one of them. And I picked the Jags to beat down on Houston. They were one of my plays for my weekly picks. Oh, what a disappointment. And it's even more disappointing if you're a Jaguars fan because, you know, Jags fans had to really, I guess, brace themselves for all of the Urban Meyer jokes that went on here. And this was almost, while it was a surprising outcome, it was almost not surprising because of all of the people, myself included, that just didn't think Urban Meyer was a very good hire. And you see this team come out, look flat against the team that had all of the excuses in the world to not give a damn in the Houston Texans, who are just selling the season. They're trading away veterans. Their quarterback isn't in there. They're basically throwing their head coach to the wolves. This is one of the worst preseason outlooks of any team in the NFL, and the Jags came out flat and got just punched in the mouth. And that is on Urban Meyer and this staff not coming prepared. I get that it's a young team. You have a rookie quarterback. Like, sure, you have excuses yourself, but you have to come out more prepared than that. And this just, they didn't have a good game plan. It's what it came down to. And they were not playing physical at all. So it's kind of worst case scenario for Jags fans that were trying to tell themselves that Urban Meyer was it. And all this comes down to is they have got to turn this thing around and prove that that is not who the Jaguars are. They play Denver this week, which is a winnable game, and we'll see. As far as Trevor Lawrence goes, it was kind of a good and the bad and the ugly type of deal. You definitely saw the highlight plays from Trevor Lawrence, the arm talent. I mean, you wonder why this guy was deemed, the best prospect since Andrew Luck. Well, the way he throws a football and the accuracy that he does it with, that's why. I mean, he commands the football with the best of them. I would say it's not far-fetched to say he has top 5 to 7 arm talent and accuracy day one. Like, that is the type of talent you have in Trevor Lawrence. And there was a couple throws in there where he's just throwing dimes, dotting dudes up down the field. But they gotta find more of a rhythm for this offense and do a better job of making things easier on Trevor Lawrence, which it did not feel like they were doing. And he was pressing a little bit. He threw 2 bad picks in this game. One, he was extending a play, and he just overthrew his guy or underthrew it. He missed his target, and it got picked by Vernon Hargreaves. And then again, later in the first half, he, basically made a bad decision. It was cover 2. I think it was either an out route or a corner route. And he was trying to fit it in the second level behind the flat defender, who was Vernon Hargreaves again. But they didn't have anybody occupying Hargreaves underneath, so Hargreaves was floating back, squatting back, and, picks off Trevor Lawrence, who tried to fit it in there. Just not a good decision. So there's some bad decisions in there, some bad throws, some really good stuff in there too. He's got a whole career ahead of him. We don't need to panic about Trevor Lawrence. But I also think Jacksonville needs to do a better job of just scheming things up for him and having an identity on offense that they just didn't have. So definitely disappointing for Jacksonville. As for the Houston Texans, it's fun. It was fun to see. Tyrod Taylor, it's impossible not to be happy to see him go out and get a win. And all these veterans that signed here because Houston wanted them. They wanted to have this kind of underdog culture, just a team full of coaches and players that are here to get almost a second opportunity to almost just like put out film and show that you can still play. That's basically what the Houston Texans are. They don't have a lot of young talent that you're all that excited about. But to see Mark Ingram play well and Tyrod Taylor and some of these other guys, Brandon Cooks was incredible in this game, by the way. Just standing out like every other play, it felt like. But yeah, Tyrod Taylor executing a fun game plan. They did some RPO stuff, brought in some of the Baltimore offense with David Coley coming over from Baltimore. Just a good game plan. And David Coley, I think I tweeted this a long time ago. I was like, yeah, he's getting thrown to the wolves and probably not going to do anything. But I really liked his opening press conference, and it kind of makes a little bit more sense why this team came out and won. And I was looking back on my Texans deep dive, and I actually had them beating Jacksonville week 1 and then losing out the rest of the season. So we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, Houston's going to need to win more before we put any stock in this, but definitely fun to see them kind of have some optimism in that building that has had none over the last 3 or 4 months and beyond. So next up, we have Minnesota at Cincinnati. And let's start with the Vikings side of the ball here. It was just kind of an ugly game from the Vikings, and I don't know if there's a ton to take away here. They almost won the game. It goes to overtime here. Kirk had a nice drive to send this thing to overtime, and he deserves credit for. And they were in field goal range to win this game, and they called a fumble on Dalvin Cook. It was one of those deals where the ball came out just as he was about to hit the ground, and every different camera angle couldn't really confirm or deny whether it was a fumble, and unfortunately for the Vikings, they had ruled it a fumble on the field, so they just had to go with the call, and the Bengals ended up flipping that into a field goal with the rookie kicker. So, not a loss worth overreacting to with the Vikings, but as I said, the the Vikings are a team that I'm selling a little bit and souring on heading into the year because this offensive line, they've invested so much in it, but they're not getting those guys to play well. And heading into the year, I thought Christian Darrisaw would be a force here. I thought Wyatt Davis would win out a starting guard job and look good there, and neither of those things have happened. Darrisaw actually didn't play in this game. They're hoping to get him back soon. But I think it was Rashad Hill playing left tackle. He got abused in this game. Trey Hendrickson played okay, but it just didn't matter. The tackle play wasn't any good. Garrett Bradbury continues to really struggle in pass protection, and Kirk Cousins is a quarterback that you can't throw out there behind a bad offensive line. He gets exponentially worse as his offensive line gets worse. He's not a guy like, Rodgers or Watson or Russ where they can improvise. That's not Kirk Cousins' game. So it's just a disaster that they can't get this offensive line figured out, and that's a concern. But the defense should be okay. They had some cornerbacks out in this game, but I still think the Vikes will be relevant and hang in there. But I also wasn't all that surprised to see them lose. I actually picked the Bengals to get this upset. And that's really all I have to say about the Vikings. They also had a lot of penalties as well. So they probably outplayed the Bengals, and it just didn't go their way at the end of it. Last thing we got to talk about here is Joe Burrow, who wasn't like spectacular in this game, but it was just big for me to kind of see him go out, get a win, make good decisions, throw with accuracy, complete some deep balls, get on the same page, get Jamar Chase kind of out of that preseason slump, which was such an overreaction. Like, love to see Jamar Chase come out and just shut everybody up about the preseason hate that he got because it was just so unnecessary. But just good vibes for the Bengals all around. There's, all the problems that we thought they would have are still concerns. I thought the O-line played okay, but still some weaknesses there. And the defense I just don't think is anything special. But just good to kind of get a win, get some momentum. They play the Bears this week in the Andy Dalton revenge game. And if they can get to 2-0 and Burrow starts to really get up to speed, because it felt like as the game went on, he got more and more comfortable, which is big because sometimes you see guys come back from those ACL injuries and they're not the same. And I think Burrow very quickly kind of remembered who he was as a quarterback. So that was just huge for the Bengals. Even if they didn't look like spectacular, just to see them kind of get back to where they were last year, where they were picking up some momentum was a big deal. So the Bengals are going to be a fun team to continue to watch. And then next up we have the Chargers at the Washington football team. This is a really competitive game. And it kind of went the way you would expect, just a little bit of sloppiness in there. I think that's just the way Washington's season is going to go. Fitzpatrick got hurt in this game. Heineke came in and was he an upgrade? Probably. He definitely brought some more explosiveness, was able to run away from Joey Bosa a little bit and push the ball downfield a little bit more, which Fitz, he didn't really get a chance to do it. He got hurt really early in this game, but their offense isn't anything special, and their defense is. Their defense lived up to the hype, so when you get a team like that, they're just going to have to kind of scrap out wins and try to compete, scoring 16, 17 points and see what you can do there. It's a tough formula to win, but I thought the defense kind of lived up to their hype against a really good offense this week, and that's really what this game was about for me. My big takeaway was, holy buckets, Justin Herbert was incredible in this game, and the stat line didn't do him justice. He's dangerous out there, and he doesn't look like a lot of these quarterbacks that have come into the league. Burrow, Kyler, Zach Wilson, Deshaun Watson, like a lot of these guys. Mahomes, they run around, they do crazy stuff, they extend plays and get you really excited with their playmaking ability. Herbert is more of a throwback at quarterback, and it's been really fun to see him kind of grow because he loves to hang tall in the pocket, knowing he's going to get hit, show that toughness, and just show off his arm talent and accuracy that is elite. And I'm going to say something that I haven't said about Herbert yet. I might say that if I just need a throw down the field, let's call it 25 yards, whether it's a deep out, a post, if I need a quarterback from a clean pocket, if you said, like, who are you taking that gives you the best chance to deliver a strike on time. Well, let's leave the on time part out because that's a mental side. But just he sees it. You need him to hit that 25-yard post with velocity and accuracy. I don't know if there's a quarterback that I would take over Herbert right now, and that includes Patrick Mahomes. Now, it's probably between him and Mahomes. Rodgers coming off a rough week, so I don't know if we're going to answer with that. I think Josh Allen, you're probably not going to answer that because I think his accuracy is maybe a tick below that. Brady's up there too, but the way that Herbert can command a football down the field is special. His accuracy, and it really showed off in the 4-minute offense that they had. They had the lead at the end of this game, and they basically just said, okay, Herbert, go win us this game. Go seal the deal. And he made big-time throw after big-time throw against pressure, getting beyond his first read, against tight coverage, just putting it in a great position to succeed, putting his receivers in a great position to make those catches, really. And that's the last point here is he's got Keenan Allen. He's got Mike Williams, who surprised me in this game. I was really selling Mike Williams. He looks healthy and like a really good option next to Keenan Allen there, paired with Herbert's arm. And Scott Linehan as the offensive coordinator, or Joe Lombardi, right? Or Lombardi. Who's the? It's not Linehan. I get those guys confused with the New Orleans connection, but it's Lombardi, I believe, is their offensive coordinator. But regardless, they had it all figured out. And Austin Eckler out of the backfield, too, running those option routes was lethal. So the Chargers offense, now that they have an offensive line and Herbert in year 2, this is getting really exciting. And then you go to the defensive side of the ball where Derwin is back. I mean, I've been saying, man, Derwin is the best safety in the NFL. You just need him to stay healthy. He was the highest graded defender in the NFL until Max Crosby happened. So This defense looked good with Brandon Staley. It is going to be so fun to see the Chargers. We just talked about the Cardinals. These are two teams that were kind of in the middle of my rankings that I thought could have gone one way or the other because they had a lot of question marks. But both these teams so far look poised for not just big seasons, not just playoff seasons, but getting into deep playoff run territory. So really exciting for the Chargers. Excited to see them go off against the Cowboys this weekend. Sorry I didn't spend more time on Washington. There's just not a whole lot to say. Their defense lived up to expectations. They got beat by a better quarterback and couldn't make the plays on offense. That's really what it comes down to, and there's going to be a lot of games like this for Washington where they're losing close. Okay, New York Jets at Carolina. I had a really fun time watching this game because I'm a huge Sam Darnold fan and I'm a huge Zach Wilson fan. So that's really what this game was about, but there was other takeaways as well. So let's talk about the quarterbacks first. Sam Darnold, it's kind of similar to Burrow in a lot of ways, where he wasn't amazing. He had one or two? It was just the one fumble. I don't think he had any interception-worthy plays off the top of my head. I'd have to go check, but he had the one fumble. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But for the most part, played in structure, was relatively accurate, moved in the pocket well, extended some plays, just kind of getting familiar with being a consistent NFL quarterback. There's not crazy expectations for Darnold right now. He's not on this massive contract yet. It's just, can you show some element of consistency? And really, Joe Brady puts such a good environment in front of Darnold. And as far as the play calling and the playmakers that they have there, it was just very smooth and looked natural for Sam Darnold, which it doesn't sound like much, but just let this guy get his feet on the ground and then you can build off of that. Because with the Jets, it was exactly what we saw with Zach Wilson in this game, where he was constantly getting hit and hurt and not having receivers open and playing banged up and having bad play calling and all of this stuff that was even worse than what we saw from Wilson out there on Sunday. So just allow Darnold to get his feet up and under him, and that's exactly what Carolina is allowing him to do. And then the other thing that's really going to help that is playing defense like the Panthers did. And this is another situation where a lot of youth, a lot of unproven players, just kind of a lot of variance there. Now, it was against the Jets, so we'll see how sustainable this is. But all three levels of that Panthers defense played at a super high level. And they have a lot of youth. I think they're really well coached with Matt Rule. And this has potential to be a top 10 defense if all these guys hit. See, Brian Burns looked incredible. Derek Brown played really well. So you can have a good pass rush with those two guys. Reddick, I didn't really notice Reddick. I'm not a big Hassan Reddick guy, but to have him as like a third or a fourth piece, you get Yetur Gross-Matos in the mix. They can have a good pass rush. Shaq Thompson played great in this game. He's a very high-paid linebacker, changing his number to number 7. Just was playing well. And then in the secondary, you got J.C. Horn, you got Jackson, you've got Jeremy Chin. So you got some youth there, and you got some veterans as well. The secondary to me is still the most questionable part because obviously going against the Jets, you're not going to get a great takeaway from that group. But yeah, the Panthers defense, definitely worth keeping an eye on to become not just like a good defense, because they were a good defense last year, but like can they really build off of that and be a top 10 defense? That's going to be a big story for the Panthers, on top of, feeling good about Darnold as a starting quarterback every week. And this was a great start for the Panthers and David Tepper, and a Panthers team that I feel like my analysis of them has been a little lower. But, I love the Panthers, and I really want them to succeed. I think David Tepper is the most likable, awesome, just good owner in the NFL right now. I've always been a Darnold guy. I think Matt Rule is really fun. So, really pulling for the Panthers, even if I've been a little bit lower on them, and excited to see where their season goes. The Jets. Oh, man. This team just can't have nice things. So, Mekhi Becton gets hurt in this game, in a game where their O-line was already really struggling. And honestly, I thought Zach Wilson was really good first, third, and fourth quarter. Second quarter, it got away from him. He made some bad decisions, and it is what it is. It was his rookie debut. But I thought first, third, and fourth quarter, he looked like a really good quarterback fighting his ass off to keep his team in that game. He had 2 unbelievable drives in this game, especially in kind of the last 3 minutes. They were trying to come back and win that game, and I would have to really dive into it to see if the Panthers were just laying off, but I don't think so. I think Zach Wilson made some really big throws, extending plays and hitting tight windows on third and fourth down to go down and lead a touchdown drive to at least make it possible for them to finish the comeback. It's just a matter of get this guy an offensive line, and he is going to be so good. I said before the draft that I have to rank Trevor Lawrence ahead of Zach Wilson because just off the tape with 3 great years from Trevor Lawrence, I just can't quite go as far as saying he's a better prospect than Zach Wilson. But I said that gap is a lot more narrow than people realized, and that Zach Wilson, my gut feeling is that he's going to be the best quarterback in this draft. And maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm confirming my priors there, but I thought he looked phenomenal. And just don't ruin him. Jets, don't do what you did to Sam Darnold here, because I would love to just know what Sam Darnold was thinking watching Zach Wilson literally run for his life that entire game. Now, the one thing Zach Wilson had that Darnold didn't is Corey Davis, who looked awesome in this game. So he at least has one really good receiver. And my last point I'll say before I move on to the next game is about Corey Davis there. My thing with Corey Davis, I've always compared him to Andrew Wiggins of the NFL. Wiggins plays in the NBA. I've said Davis is the Andrew Wiggins of the NFL because he's kind of soft. He's always been kind of soft and doesn't have that it factor. He doesn't have that my ball mentality. You kind of know what I mean if you've watched Corey Davis. He just doesn't really seem to have that next level superstar mentality. And he had one catch here for the Jets where he catches the ball over the middle of the field, breaks a couple tackles, runs away from some defenders, looked super explosive and tough, gets up, fired up, he's got the captain's badge, and I'm like, let's go. That's what we've wanted from Corey Davis. I think that's what the Titans wanted from him, is what A.J. Brown does for that team and brings that energy and swagger and toughness. So if they can get that from Corey Davis, that's huge, because he was kind of a bargain free agent signing. He only got $14 million. So that was big to see Corey Davis look that good. And that's really all I have to say about that game. Next up, we have the Philadelphia Eagles at the Atlanta Falcons. Let me take a quick sip of lemonade here. So, I picked the Eagles to win this game coming into the week, and my reasoning for that was I look at the Eagles' offensive and defensive line compared to the Falcons' offensive and defensive line. And you can't draw up much more of a mismatch than that. Because the Eagles coming into the year, I think I ranked them like 6th on the offensive line. But my caveat there is if these guys are healthy, they're like maybe the best in the NFL. And that was the big question because the last 2 years, the Eagles' offensive line has not been able to stay healthy. But you have really all pro caliber players from center to right tackle with Jason Kelce, Brandon Brooks coming back. We weren't sure if he was going to be able to stay healthy. He's out there now. And Lane Johnson, same thing. They all played spectacular in this game. You got Isaac Seumalo at left guard, backed up by Landon Dickerson, who was a first-round caliber player with health questions. And then Jordan Mailata at left tackle, who just got a massive contract and is an absolute beast. So there's no reason that Eagles offensive line can't be the best in the NFL. And then we know that Eagles defensive line is great when they're healthy too. Fletcher Cox still has it. Brandon Graham still has it. Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat. You got a guy in, Ridgeway stepping up this week. They also have Javon Hargrave just chilling there. So the line play for Philadelphia against Atlanta, who they suck on both sides of the ball. Grady Jarrett is all they have on the defensive line, and Jake Matthews is all they have on the offensive line. And, well, that's not true. Chris Lindstrom's fine, more than fine. But they have some serious weaknesses with McGarry and Hennessy, who was on my breakout list, was not good in this game. And, my God, Jalen Mayfield, a rookie at left guard, was brutal. So, offensive line for Atlanta, defensive line, they got mollywopped in this game. They got abused. That's why I picked the Eagles. The Eagles didn't have to do much as far as like a vertical passing game. I think I just saw before I record this, Jalen Hurts had like a 3.4 air yards per attempt or whatever. They ran the ball, they did read options, and did quick game, really, and the Falcons couldn't stop it. But that said, even if they weren't pushing the ball downfield a ton, Jalen Hurts played really well. And he extended plays and made some throws downfield when he needed to. It's not like he never pushed the ball downfield. He dropped a dime to Devontae Smith for the first touchdown of the game. It was a rub route, so they credit to Nick Sirianni, by the way. Good start for him. They schemed up Devontae Smith on, where you have like, he's lined up in the slot, you have your left wide receiver, kind of runs it at the slot corner, bumps him off, and then you get Devontae Smith kind of running what you call a 9Y, a numbers go, where they're running towards the sideline and going up. Or a fade, whatever you want to call it. And good, like 25, 30-yard throw maybe. Jalen Hurts put it right in there for a dime. So the accuracy was good from Hurts. The decision-making was good. Now, he wasn't under a lot of pressure. As I said, the offensive line was good. They did a really good job with defense and the run game to support him. But the expectations aren't crazy for Jalen Hurts. And if he plays like that, that is a top 24 quarterback in the NFL. And if you're getting that from your second-round pick, who's, I tweeted about this, but I said, when he was at Alabama, he was a running back being asked to play quarterback. He transfers to Oklahoma because Tua was going to start, and he looked like an intriguing kind of day 2, day 3. Also, my camera's kind of going nuts here. Hold on. There we go. That should fix that. But at Oklahoma, okay, intriguing day 2, day 3 quarterback prospect. Gets to Philly last year, looks like a fringe starting quarterback as a second-round pick. And then this year, he looks like, at very worst, like a starting caliber cornerback. So his trajectory has been like way up year to year to year. And everyone praises his work ethic. And it shows. Like, he has modified his mechanics. He has become so much more accurate. The decision-making clearly is improving. He was effective in that West Coast quick game stuff that they were doing. He brings a lot to the table as a runner. So stock continues to go up and up and up for Jalen Hurts, which is great for the Eagles, especially if those lines can stay healthy. And they got some playmakers in there all of a sudden. I mean, credit to Howie Roseman, who got so much crap over the last 2 years. This is a good Eagles roster. I know I ranked them low in my power rankings, but even then I felt like I was higher on the Eagles because the health stuff has been an issue for them across the board, but it's a good roster across the board, really. Devontae Smith, Rager looked okay, first-round pick last year. You got 2 tight ends. Zach Ertz is on this team despite all of the trade rumors. He looked good. You got Miles Sanders played really well behind this run blocking. And my dude, Kenneth Gainwell, got to do a shout out to KG. Was my number 4 running back in this class. That was a second to a third round talent. They get him in like the 5th or 6th round. So just kind of reloading this team overnight. And I think they're right in the mix for the NFC East. I think it's going to come down to the wire, really. I think they've put themselves in the conversation, at least, with Philly and Dallas. It was just Atlanta. I'm not trying to super overreact here, but I was really impressed by the Eagles. Atlanta, I mean, there's not much to say, man. Their offense continued to kind of just be stagnant. The offensive line is a serious issue, and you got to give Matt Ryan time to throw if you want him to play anywhere close to a top half quarterback in the league. So the offense has a lot of work to do. I did find it cool the way they were using Cordarrelle Patterson. I thought it was interesting. Both as a receiver and as a running back, I liked the scheme fit because it's basically just be big and fast and strong, whether you're at receiver or at running back, with the outside zone and the crossing routes. And he was just a full-on running back here. He had some really nice runs for them. Really fits the outside zone scheme. So that was a positive note for the offense if you're looking for one. And then defensively, this is quite possibly the worst defense in the NFL. They have Grady Jarrett. They have Deion Jones, who's good. And then A.J. Terrell's fine, but not a superstar. And then nobody else, really. I just want to make sure I'm not, selling anybody short there. But that's really all it is. And they didn't seem particularly well coached either. So, yeah, Atlanta's in a lot of trouble. They are retooling, to say the least. Let's move on to Pittsburgh at Buffalo now. This was a tough game to find your takeaways. It was a scrappy game. Pittsburgh was brutal in the first half, and then they kind of got, stabilized in the second half. And then Buffalo just couldn't really get anything going on offense, mostly because of the Steelers' pass rush that was the best pass rush in the NFL this weekend. And I think with the Melvin Ingram signing, it's pretty safe to say that this is the best pass rush in the NFL. I got to shout out, before we get into anything here, Cam Hayward on the interior of this defensive line. He was in my top 50 players list on our last podcast. And I was watching this game. I'm like, he seems like he's about to hit Josh Allen on every single drop back. And I go and look, and there he is. And now I say this, I said Derwin James was the highest graded defensive player, but that's not true. Cam Hayward had a PFF grade of 95.3, which is about as high as you'll see. That's Aaron Donald on his best day territory. With 12 pressures and a sack, 11 hurries, he was all over that interior offensive line and put a ton of pressure on Josh Allen. And then you pair that with TJ Watt, who, had a great game, but was an afterthought compared to what Cam Hayward did. And Melvin Ingram looked great. This pass rush is going to be a problem for anybody. And I kind of said this in the power rankings, but if the Steelers play like this, where they get after the quarterback, play really good defense, and a pass rush that good is really going to hide your issues in the secondary. And then on offense, you're hanging in the game. Ben's just slinging it around, not playing good football, but at some point you're going to get Chase Claypool going over a corner for a tough catch. You're going to get Deontay Johnson making great catches and being a really good receiver. You'll eventually get Najee Harris to break off some big plays. So that's kind of their formula. Elite defense and just lean on your playmakers on offense, because Big Ben was not good in this game. He's far from it. So a big win for the Steelers. I think this is a formula it allows you to beat a team like Buffalo. But a lack of explosion on offense, I think they're also a team that can lose to much worse teams than they are as well. I think this is the way a lot of their games look, is dominant defense and Big Ben just leaning on his playmakers to make difficult plays, and that may or may not happen every week. As for the Bills, I didn't think the Bills were that bad, honestly. The one thing I'm really worried about with the Bills is the pass rush that was supposed to be much improved this year, and they weren't really getting after it. So that was a big pivotal point, was if this defense is going to be taken more seriously this year, that the pass rush needs to step up, and they just didn't really get that. Offensively, they left some points on the board, and you saw Josh Allen overthrow a decent amount of throws in this game. He missed Emmanuel Sanders on a deep ball that would have been a touchdown. Emmanuel Sanders was a bigger part of the game plan, and he looked pretty good. So I'm not that worried about the Bills. Josh Allen does need to straighten out his drive, if you know what I mean. But as long as that happens, I think that offense is going to be just fine. Interior offensive line, maybe a little bit of a worry there, but it looked like a little bit of regression from last year. But even if they come down a little bit from last year, they're still going to be a damn good football team. And then hopefully that defense can figure some things out. So I really didn't have a whole lot of takeaways from the Bills. Just wasn't really their day. Josh Allen missed some throws. They had a block punt return for a touchdown in the second half that really kind of got this game out of control for them. And that's really all I'm going to say about the Bills for now. I'm not ready to freak out about them. So then we have the Seahawks at the Indianapolis Colts. For the Colts, they might be the Indianapolis Colts, but they lack the horses, man. They just do not have the firepower on offense and defense to hang with a team like Seattle. And, no one doubts that Frank Reich is a great coach, that Chris Ballard's a good GM, that they have a really tough, consistent week-to-week defense that plays really well-disciplined, and that Matt Eberflus is going to put those guys in a position to succeed, that they tackle well, and all this stuff. Like, they're a good football team. But with the Colts, it's a matter of what comes next. And I was talking about when they signed Nyheim Hines, I was like, they need to start hitting on positions that matter. And Colts fans are like, you're such a hater. You're being such a Debbie Downer on the Colts. And it's like, no, I really like the Colts. I genuinely do. I've got the Andrew Luck thing right there. I've always just been akin to the Colts. I don't know if that's the right word there, but it's frustrating that they haven't taken that next step, because it was cool when they came out and won, 10 games with Jacoby Brissett. It was cool last year seeing Phillip Rivers, another one of my favorites, come in, and they had a good team. But I talk about it on this podcast all the time. Dare to be great. You got to take that next step. You got to go for the Super Bowl. And with the Colts, they need to hit on star receivers. They need Kwity Paye to turn into a great player. They need cornerbacks to step up. They need star players to hit at the positions that matter, because they've got a D tackle, they've got a linebacker, they've got a slot corner, they've got a third down running back. They've got players at positions that just don't impact the game in the same way that, case in point in Seattle, that Russell Wilson does at quarterback, that DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett do at receiver. You need those big-time players at critical positions to hang with a team like Seattle on a good day. And that's exactly what the Colts' problem was, is they lacked the firepower. I think it's going to be a year for them about finding out who can be that guy at those positions. Does a Paris Campbell step up? Does Carson Wentz hit? Does Kwity Paye hit? Can Rock Ya-Sin take that next step? That's the big question for the Colts this year if they want to be a great football team. As for the Seahawks, man, this was exactly what Seahawks fans were hoping the Shane Waldron offense was going to look like. Play action, outside zone, beautifully designed route concepts, getting guys open down the field. Russell hitting those beautiful moonball deep shots. It was a thing of beauty to watch this offense. Really from start to finish, they played pretty well. They're better in the first half than the second half, but Russell Wilson is definitely in the top 3 to 4 MVP candidates this year if this is what the offense looks like. What was much different for the Seahawks here was their pass rush was really good in this game. Now, Braden Smith played really bad for the Colts, by the way. They just gave him a big extension. The left tackle situation is totally in flux for the Colts. So you take that with a grain of salt, but their two draft picks from last year, Alton Robinson and Darrell Taylor, were fantastic in this game. And I like Robinson more than Taylor, but damn, it's good to see Darrell Taylor play like that too, because they did spend a second-round pick on him, and he's got the physical upside to get there. And they've been waiting a long time for these pass rushers to hit, and it looks like in the first week of the season that could be the case for Seattle. If they get that pass rush going, this defense can be, an average to above average group. They're going to be incredibly well coached there in Seattle. You still got Bobby Wagner in the middle level. Jamal Adams, I thought, was pretty good in this game. So this defense can come alive a little bit more. The Seahawks with that offense, that is a Super Bowl contending team right there. So big week for the Seahawks. Definitely an exciting time for Seattle. Cleveland at Kansas City. This was the game of the week. I would say. We kind of knew it would be, and it lived up to the hype. And, we can give the Chiefs credit. There's no reason they don't deserve it. They've been the storyline of the last 4 years is how freaking good the Chiefs are. And Mahomes and Hill and Kelsey and Andy Reid and Bieniemy, like, this is such an elite combination of offensive talent. The defense stepped up in the fourth quarter, but didn't really do much all game. It was really just about Mahomes fighting back. They recover a fumble from Hunt, or it was actually Chubb fumbles, and then the Browns botched a snap and really just fell apart at the end of the game. A couple mistakes is all it takes for the Chiefs to come back and win. So big win for the Chiefs. I think for me this was much more about the Browns coming out and living up to the hype. I think, yes, they lost, but this was an impressive performance by the Cleveland Browns. The offensive line shows no signs of slowing down. They look like they might be even better. You got these two running backs are legitimate game changers, Hunt and Chubb, and Odell Beckham hasn't even been able to play yet in this new Stefanski offense. But Baker played really well. He deserves a lot of credit, even though he kind of got worse as the game went on. We'll see. I think Baker can become a top 10 quarterback. Otherwise, he's just a good quarterback on that offense that's surrounded by talent. David Njoku played really well. Anthony Schwartz, much more involved in this game than myself and many expected him to be. A third-round pick out of Auburn, who's a legit track star with real 4.2 speed. He took the top off that Chiefs defense a couple times and became a factor for them. Jarvis was awesome in this game. So they have a ton of offensive talent. Defensively, they have some work to do. It was the Chiefs for sure, but you can tell that it's a young secondary that runs that cover 4 system, so they're going to need to continue to evolve how well they're able to communicate those coverages, because cover 4 and cover 6, which you see a lot of in those kind of split safety defenses, it requires a lot of communication and experience. So it's going to take time for this group to really click together, I think. But the pass rush was as good as advertised. Myles Garrett was incredible in this game. Kind of single-handedly made some plays that made the Browns defense, I think, look serviceable. So, Browns living up to the hype, and they get to turn around and play Houston next week. So they get rewarded. Despite having to open it at Kansas City, they at least get to beat down on Houston, unless Houston's just really good, but that's probably not going to happen. Let's move on to Green Bay at New Orleans, and definitely need to take a second here to breathe, because this was crazy. Let's start with the Packers. And, this team has had a game like this every year in the Matt LaFleur era, both years. They had the Chargers in 2019. Last year it was in Tampa Bay. So it's hard to know, because it's week 1, is this just another game where they come out flat, just like those other 2 games where, nothing's working. The receivers aren't getting open. Rodgers playing like crap. The defense doing nothing to bring to the table. And it's frustrating for Packers fans, because most teams that are playoff caliber teams don't come out and just absolutely lay stinkers like this. You'll see the Seahawks play down to their competition. You'll see the Steelers play down to their competition. The Chiefs, everybody can play down to their competition. But when the Packers do it, it's like they get slaughtered and everybody freaks out about it. Now it's week 1, so it's impossible to know, is this just the 2021 Packers, or was it just a weird week and they came unprepared? I personally think it was just one of those weeks. And, Vegas agrees they're 11-point favorites against Detroit next week. But we're going to find out. So I don't think it's worth overreacting to the Packers yet. Now, if they continue to play like this, of course, we can put out all the takes and all this stuff. But I will say the Packers have done this before, and I love the point that the Saints beat the Bucs 38-3 last year, too. They went on to win the Super Bowl. So it's a reminder to not overreact to 1 week, but there's definitely some concerns there worth noting. I think the real thing to take away here is from the Packers' defense. Because offensively, they just have too much talent there. They're too well coached. They're too well quarterbacked to not turn this thing back around very quickly, especially when we've seen them play like this and turn it around the next week, like in a hurry. And in a week where, as we're about to mention with this defense, the Saints became the first team since 2000 to have back-to-back 15-play touchdown drives. So the Packers just weren't on the field. And then by the time they got on the field, they were way behind. So it was a great execution by the Saints. But the Packers' defense was definitely concerning. And I think you definitely give credit to Sean Payton for recognizing that, all right, the Packers are switching to the Brandon Staley, Vic Fangio quarters coverage defense. And they most certainly did in this game, a lot of quarters coverage. A lot of off-man quarters coverage where the corners are playing off. So Sean Payton said, okay, first week in this new system, we know they're not going to give up the deep ball. And outside of Kevin King getting ran past by, what's his name, Deontay Harris, they did. The coverage held up on the back end very well. But what they didn't do is what the Broncos do in this system and what the Rams do in this system. And that is when they try to run the ball, when they try to throw screens, when they try to throw the ball underneath, when they try to scramble, you gotta really realize if you're a safety or you're a linebacker or a slot corner, you gotta be very aware of the underneath stuff and you gotta bolt down there because there are just not the bodies in that part of the field. So if you want to run this defense, you gotta understand where you're vulnerable. And that's what Brandon Staley does so well as a head coach, is communicate to their players, here's your assignment, and here's where we're vulnerable in this play. And when you know where you're vulnerable, you're prepared to attack that weakness. So the Packers clearly had no idea basically how much they needed to close down and clamp down underneath. And Sean Payton and this offense went right at that, whether it was in the run game, to the outside, or just the screen game, the quick passing game, Alvin Kamara, Adam Troutman on a screen, that kind of stuff. Jameis Winston scrambling in this game. And we'll talk about the Saints here and how impressive Jameis was. But the Packers defense has got to figure themselves out really quickly. And that's where I was wrong about the Packers. I really thought this system was going to click in place right away. I thought the coaching was going to be an upgrade from what they had in Mike Pettin. The Packers haven't had good defensive coaching for 10 plus years. So I guess they're just going to have to prove that they can play defense when they have all this talent, which is very frustrating. But that was my big takeaway from the Packers, was really how bad the defense looked. Because, the offense, they obviously played like crap. And you can give Rodgers all the criticism in the world. He definitely deserves it. He was not pulling the trigger. They kept showing the coaches' film. There's nowhere for Rodgers to really go with the football. But he's, you watch Herbert on that third down drive we were describing. You watch Tom Brady. Rodgers does this sometimes when they do get blown out. And I think this is a very real criticism of him. He doesn't like to pull the trigger on receivers that are in contested coverage. He doesn't like to trust his receivers to go make a play, which is really problematic when Alan Lazard is your frickin' slot receiver most of the game, which is another tangent. I don't get why Cobb and Amari Rodgers weren't on the field more when the Saints were just running man coverage all game, but it's another tangent. But yeah, Rodgers won't pull the trigger. He won't throw that, well-placed fade or go-get-it ball for Lazard or MVS. He really wants these guys to be open. And when they're clamping down like that, sometimes you got to just, make a good read and trust your receiver. And he wasn't doing that. I did think the offensive line, which was actually the biggest concern for the Packers heading into the year, was pretty good. Josh Myers held up really well. Elton Jenkins played phenomenal at left tackle. So I will say that that's one piece of optimism to take away from this game for Green Bay. But for the most part, it's just going to be about forgetting that game and proving that was just an outlier. But for the Saints, man, what a turnaround for the Saints. And I try to tell you guys, a lot of people, when I ranked them 14th in my power rankings, people were like, this is way too high. You're crazy. This is a, bottom 20s team. Coach and culture, man, matters. You got to remember that. And Sean Payton brings some of the best coaching culture in the league. And that goes such a far way as far as game planning, just as we described, knowing what your opponent's weaknesses are going to be and attacking that. But it's also player development. And he's clearly been able to get to Jameis Winston. I don't want to say clearly because it's only 1 week and he wasn't under a lot of pressure. But in this game, Jameis Winston looked like a new man because no one's doubted Jameis's ability to, put up points, throw touchdowns, extend plays, and be a good quarterback. The problem is every 8 plays, Jameis has been just making terrible decisions. And he didn't do that in this game. He was patient. He threw the ball away when it wasn't there. And he didn't let the Packers back in this game. So that's huge for the Saints. And the other thing that's just trending so dramatically up for the Saints is about 4 months ago, it seemed like they were finally going to have to run out of cap space. They had negative $95 million in cap space. They cut guys like Eli Apple. They cut Quan Alexander, who's back on this team. They cut... you get the point. They had to cut some veterans. Nothing serious. Emmanuel Sanders. And it was like, okay, they're running out of resources. Their roster's getting worse. They're going to have to make even more cuts because even after that first wave of cuts, they were still $45 million over. And then before you know it, you don't hear anything, but all of a sudden they have $11 million in cap space. So $50 million in cap space just came out of their butts, apparently. And then they use that to go and trade for a Bradley Roby from Houston, who didn't play in this game, but just a genius move. They go and get him, and they get Houston to pay for his salary, which is just genius. They sign Desmond Trufant off the streets. They bring back Quan Alexander. And it's just insane that the Saints seem to be the only team in the NFL that operates under the philosophy that getting more players is a good thing for our team. Like, Desmond Trufant becomes available, they're like, yeah, let's bring him in. Let's work him out. Let's find a way to get him on the team. Oh, Quan Alexander hasn't been signed yet? I don't know why, but let's work it out. Let's bring him in. They just signed another guy, an Austin Reeder. So the front office in New Orleans is just remarkable. And that's not even talking about the draft, where they seem to have hit on one of my guys in this draft, Paulson Adebo, who I said was the best player that they drafted, even though he was a third-round pick. He was lockdown in this game. He looked awesome as a rookie corner. So just the front office, the coaching, the culture, we talked so much about benefit of the doubt in that deep dive series. And this was the most ringing endorsement of why I say that all the time. And I instill confidence in a team like the Saints, who, things aren't, or the Steelers are another good example of that. Things might look bad, but the teams with those elite cultures, they figure things out. That's why I'm not panicking about the Ravens either. So a lot to talk about with that game. Miami at New England. Dolphins fans officially think I just hate them. I don't. I like Brian Flores a ton. That defense, I will praise that defense. Their defense is phenomenal. Emmanuel Ogbah really brought a pass rush in this game. He looked really good, even though it was against backups. As Trent Brown got injured at right tackle. The corners are awesome. Byron Jones had a great game. Xavier Howard had a great game. Defense, there's no doubt. This defense is awesome, and they can only get better, too, because they've got some good young talent in there. My holdup with the Dolphins is their offense. It always has been. Their offense. I'm not worried about their defense. But, no one looks at the Washington football team and is like, that's an elite team. Well, Washington has a better defense and a better offense than New England. They just don't get as many turnovers and win. And, Dolphins fans are like, oh, the turnovers are sustainable. To a degree, yeah, but you can't count on that every week. You just can't. So that's really what it comes down to for Miami. Full disclosure, I worked a full game of the all route, charting the routes for New England, for PFF. I still do part-time. So I was charting the routes, just what receivers are running what routes. And the Dolphins offense, it looked like it was literally the game plan that if you have a backup quarterback, if you're the Browns and Case Keenum's in there, or you're the Chargers and you got to go to Easton Stick, the Dolphins game plan was what you prepare your offense to look like when you have a limited backup quarterback. RPOs, get rid of the ball quickly, work back to, work down to up. There's a phrase for that that's escaping me. But it was literally we're going to run the most conservative offense we possibly can and not let Tua cost us this game. And it got them a win. It got them 17 points. It got Jalen Waddle making some plays. The run game was okay, and they escaped after New England fumbled for a fourth time, and they recovered it. But, I mean, seriously, I hate to keep pointing this out, but Tua is literally a backup quarterback. He is in the Tyrod Taylor echelon, the Case Keenum echelon of quarterbacks. He doesn't make great decisions. He has turnover-worthy throws almost every week. And he doesn't have the physical talent to be like this explosive player. So that's when I watch Tua play football, that's what I see. And that's not a sustainable level of quarterback play, especially when quarterback play is at an all-time high. Like, freaking Saints just got Jameis Winston. I would take Jameis Winston over Tua in a heartbeat right now. So that's my holdup with the Dolphins is their offensive line sucks. They have two offensive coordinators that are putting together this, like, they're basically putting training wheels on the offense for Tua, which I don't know if I agree with that strategy. At least find out if he can play. And you have a quarterback that just isn't a high-level player. So I don't see this as a sustainable thing. We'll see how that plays out this week. They got to take on the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. So, yeah, that's all it is with Miami. I'm really held up on Tua and this offense that did not play well in this game. And New England, they kind of outplayed them. They had more yards, better defense, you name it. But the two fumbles were really poorly timed for New England, and it had them lose the game by 1 point. I do think that Mac Jones played really well in this game. He kind of looked like a 5-year vet, really composed. The pocket presence for Mac Jones continues to just be so effortless for him. He navigates the pocket so well. So that's a huge asset for Mac Jones. He even, got outside the pocket a little bit, but he was really accurate. He had some second-level throws that were really nice. He had a deep out that was beautiful, and he had that drop-in-the-bucket throw to James White on a wheel route where he's coming out of the backfield going vertical and drops it right in there. It was a pretty good game for Mac Jones. Now, still rookie, not like incredibly explosive, but this is like a good formula for New England. It's not a great formula for New England. It's going to be tough to win a Super Bowl with this, but I think especially when they get Stephon Gilmore back, they can count on the defense to hold other teams to under 20 points. And the chat sometimes distracts me, but offensively, I think they can move the ball and score a couple touchdowns, kick a couple field goals, and win a lot of games in that 21-20 territory. So it was an interesting game for sure. I really don't want to keep dogging on the Dolphins, but that's one of the takes that I'm most convicted in and genuinely believe that this just isn't going to work with Tua. He just does not look like a starting quarterback in the NFL. And Mac Jones entering the league as the 5th quarterback drafted in this class and looking so much better than Tua is kind of case in point as to why. So that's that game. Let's move on to the Bears-Rams game. Not as much to say here, other than the Rams they looked like you hoped. Matthew Stafford gets all this MVP hype and gets paired with Sean McVay, and it's just let's see Stafford surrounded by great talent. And that's what we got. I mean, he was able to just uncork the deep ball, show off his arm, made great decisions. Was good in the red zone, just kind of unstoppable offensively for the majority of the game. And the Rams' defense was really good, but I think a lot of that is just the Bears' offense is so anemic right now. Jalen Ramsey was super fun to watch in this game. He was the best player on the field when the Bears were on offense. I mean, they're lining him up in that slot star position where he's kind of playing like a nickel corner, strong safety, linebacker corner, hybrid modern defender role on early downs, because he's able to do so much more and get so much get active in that part of the field. And his ability to shut down runs was so fun to watch. And then when you get to passing downs, they can put him where he's best suited to defend. In this case, he's on Allen Robinson a lot. There's going to be other matchups they like there, but just really good defensive coaching with Raheem Morris stepping in for Brandon Staley, who took the Chargers job. Just overall, the Rams are another culture team that just kind of does everything right. And it was a really impressive outing for the Rams, and they play the Colts this week, which is going to be another tough fight for them, but one that I think they're certainly ready to handle and continue Stafford's MVP campaign here. And then let's talk about the Bears. The Bears defense was the Bears defense other than coverage busts. They also run this quarters cover 4 system. They have a new defensive coordinator in Sean Diossi. And they had some miscommunications in the secondary, blown coverages, and that, the Rams made them pay for it. And that's what's exciting about Stafford is if you let a guy over the top, he's going to hammer that thing home. And it's going to be a massive play, and they capitalized. But for the most part, I'm not too worried about the Bears' defense. They just got to clean up some of the communication. The Bears' offense is just so lame. And I thought Dalton kind of executed the game plan pretty well. After the unfortunate, pick in the end zone, that was his fault, but it was still unfortunate. It gets deflected and goes right to the Rams guy. It's just a combination of bad play and bad luck. But for the most part, he got rid of the ball quickly, and they moved the ball. Montgomery was awesome in this game, by the way. But I actually thought the Bears' offense played a little bit better than I expected they would, and I think Dalton deserves some credit for that. He was not spectacular, and everyone's excited for Justin Fields to eventually come in and give them a higher ceiling than that. But I definitely have some pushback on this whole, Justin Fields needs to start right now thing, because I get that there's excitement there, and I get that he'd probably be a little bit more dynamic and be a little bit better for the Bears' offense right now. But this is not a Super Bowl team, man. Their offensive line's in shambles. They have one receiver. Their secondary's a mess. This is not a Super Bowl team. This should be a team that is much more concerned about their future. And in Justin Fields' case, yes, he's dynamic. Yes, he's explosive. Yes, all of these teams ahead of him should have drafted him. The team that the Bears traded up for, that we're about to talk about, the Giants, should have drafted him. He's an exciting, explosive prospect, and I get that people want to see him. But as I said about Justin Fields, and I still believe this, he was the quarterback in this class that had the most notable bad tendencies in this draft, and it showed up again in the preseason, where he holds the ball too long, and he can be a little bit sporadic as well with his decision-making. And when you put him, that's usually fine, right? Usually I would say, play that guy, let him weed it out, let him figure it out. But when the Bears' tackles are maybe Larry Borum, I don't know what his injury issue is. Maybe Donald Penn, who, is he healthy? I don't know. But when you're putting him out there behind one of the worst O-lines in the NFL, and you don't have these great receivers, and he has all this pressure on him, I think that's a recipe to compound Fields' negatives in his game, which I'm not afraid to say, man. He is way too slow to get to his second read, and he hangs onto the ball too long, and sometimes he plays hero ball and tries to do too much. And those are the kind of tendencies that can really start to brew into his game and become a part of his game. And they're trying to get him to speed up the processing and the decision making, not put him in a situation that's just going to make him question what he's doing and destroy his confidence, and just giving him things that you don't want him to see. So I see both arguments, but I really don't think rushing Justin Fields out there to lose games and get sacked and play hero ball is healthy. I think that destroyed Carson Wentz, who had some of those same tendencies for the Eagles. When he had a good situation around him, they were building off of it, but it got worse and worse and worse, and he's turned into this monster. So I worry about this whole public outcry that is unlike anything I've ever seen to get Justin Fields on the field. It could work. It could be an upgrade. He could hit the ground running. It's definitely a possibility. But I totally understand the Bears' perspective on this, where let's be a little bit careful with this thing, because we've seen quarterbacks, and Wentz is just the most recent example. We've seen younger prospects than that we've seen quarterbacks really fall apart mentally when they're in a bad situation. Sam Darnold is another great example. So I don't know. I have a lot of pushback on this whole idea of like Justin Fields needs to start week 2. I personally disagree. So let's move on to, we've got 3 more games. The last 2 I really am going to kind of gloss over because I haven't actually finished watching them yet. But the Ravens-Raiders game, I'm definitely worried about the Ravens. These injuries are hurting, especially in the secondary. Marcus Peters was a big loss for them, clearly in this game. They have a weakness in the secondary right now, and Jimmy Smith is injured too. So the Ravens run a very man coverage heavy system, which puts a lot of pressure on the corners, but they also love to zero blitz. And right now they have kind of a risky combination of a non-elite pass rush and a secondary that you don't have, 5 corners out there or 5 defensive backs that you trust in man coverage. So they're kind of having to go to their curveball or to their backhand or whatever the right saying is. They're having to, or will in the future have to, win in different ways defensively. Now, they're a culture team. They'll figure some things out, and they're not going to be a bad team. But this team had, expectations to take that next step and, be in an AFC championship and beyond. And I think this defense is just going to be kind of middling, at least for these next couple weeks until they figure things out. And offensively, the offensive line is not looking good. Their run game is clearly hurting by the offensive line not looking good, by these running backs getting injured. They are in a really chaotic situation right now, and that's not healthy for Lamar Jackson. A lot of pressures on Lamar right now to kind of carry this team for these next few weeks, and it will be fun as a football fan to see, how does Lamar do in that situation? I'm excited to find out. He's got to play the Chiefs this week. They're only 3.5-point underdogs against the Chiefs. I don't know about that. I don't think the Ravens are all that impressive right now in any phase of the game. But I think they'll get there. They'll figure some things out, but I'm worried about them right now. And then for the Raiders, just an impressive game all around. Carr played really well. I talked about that in the power rankings, and he was pushing the ball downfield vertical, comfortable in the offense, extending plays, and he showed some of that it factor that you really want your quarterback to show late in games, and that's big time for the Raiders because they're going to need Carr to play like that if they want to be taken really seriously. But defensively, my biggest knocks on this team were, just give me 1 second here. I'm just going to put someone in the chat in timeout. I don't know if that worked or not, but anyway, we were talking about the Raiders. Their biggest question marks on defense for me was the pass rush, and Jonathan Abram was a big part of that as well. And all of that came together. So you had, refocusing here. You had Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue that I painted as like a decent edge duo without an interior rush that was going to be kind of maybe an improved pass rush, but not like anything special. Well, that was a special pass rush on Monday night. And, they've been up and down enough throughout their career to say, let's pump the brakes on saying this is what Yannick Ngakoue said, which is the best, edge rush duo in football. I'm not ready to go there, but, step 1 of that plan is looking good for the Raiders. They were phenomenal. Crosby's a lengthy, explosive player. Yannick has the speed and the bend around the edge. If they play like that, that defense is going to shape up really quickly, especially because I really like how Gus Bradley, the new defensive coordinator, kind of put Jonathan Abram in that box safety Cam Chancellor role. He only played 1 rep as a free safety, and I don't know what rep it was. It could have been a rotation deal where he kind of had to scramble up top, or it could have just been a Hail Mary. I'd have to find out, but the PFF record on him was 1 rep as a single high free safety, or just a free safety in general. I don't even know if it was single high. Every other snap was linebacker, strong safety, slot corner, around the line of scrimmage. And Abram is just what he was the other night. He was serviceable in that role. He's not a high-end cover player, But you get that kind of physical presence, that energy in that part of the field, a guy that'll come up and tackle well and, make a big play and get up and, hype up the defense. I think there's some value in that. If you can put him in a position that limits his coverage liabilities, which he is a coverage liability, but it's a lot different when he's in that position, which is just kind of a wild card for the defense. You're never going to put that player in a spot where he's, trying to prevent big plays or manned up against the number one receiver. That's a good spot for Jonathan Abram. So that was just a good scheme decision, which this team's been making. I mean, it goes back to LaMarcus Joyner playing slot corner. The coaching has been making terrible decisions with how they use these guys. So just from a player usage standpoint, things look to be trending up with Gus Bradley. The last point is Casey Hayward was really good in this game too. So the Raiders defense is, if they're just an average unit, I will be wrong about the Raiders. And I'm not afraid to say that. I do actually like the Raiders. I think that stadium is sick. I think Gruden can coach. I'm not the biggest Derek Carr fan, I'm not going to lie there, but I would love to see the Raiders be much better than I expected. And I think the defense looking that way is huge for that to happen. So big night for the Raiders. They got to play the Steelers this week, which should be another epic battle. So big win. And by the way, they have one of the best players in football in Darren Waller, which kind of helps too. And how about that breakout for Bryan Edwards? You can't say I'm always wrong about the Raiders fans, because, I'm usually right about their draft picks. But Bryan Edwards was number 2 on my breakout list, and he was awesome. So we got 2 more games that, just full disclosure, I have not finished getting through. I saw the first half of this Denver Giants game. I still need to watch the second half. And then I haven't gotten to the Niners-Lions game either. So take whatever I say here with a slight grain of salt, because I haven't gotten through these games in their entirety yet. But as far as the Broncos-Giants game, Broncos take care of business. The defense is really what this seems to be the big takeaway here. Is Von Miller especially looked outstanding in this game. Granted, against Nate Solder, who gets a lot of crap, but I think if that Broncos defense gets Von Miller back, they have so much other talent that's only going to get better because you have that elite presence as a pass rusher, whether it's the front 7, whether it's the linebackers, the secondary. This defense has all of the pieces in place to have that elite coaching, elite chemistry, no weaknesses, scheme, a type of defense that can be a Super Bowl caliber defense. They have the players to do that. And this was kind of the first step towards building that. Offensively, they do lose Jerry Jeudy to a pretty gruesome ankle injury. He's going to be out for a couple months, it sounds like. That's going to be a hit for their offense. He was really good in this game in the first half until he got hurt. And Teddy Bridgewater seemed to have a really good chemistry with him. But they got Sutton. They still have all these great playmakers. So I think the offense is going to be okay. I do think they made the right decision with Teddy Bridgewater, from what I can tell right now. Because if Von Miller's playing like that, you will have an elite defense. And then you hope for that, Peyton Manning season, the last Peyton Manning year, where he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Brock Osweiler was in there, and they still won a Super Bowl. So that's kind of what they're hoping for here. And then maybe getting the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes next year. But, trending up for Denver. They got Vic Fangio. They got all this talent. There's no reason their defense shouldn't play at that level every week. So big for Denver. And the Giants, they are the most boring team in the league right now. I'm sorry, Giants fans. I love Patrick Graham as a defensive coordinator. I think he's exciting, and the things he does schematically and some of the way they use these guys in the secondary is really fun. It's not all bad. But when your offense looks like this, week after week after week, Jason Garrett's your coordinator, Daniel Jones is your head coach, it's just so boring. Where is this going? Daniel Jones is fine, but he is not it. I get frustrated by teams that can't identify stuff like that. It comes back to the thing with Tua. Not that they necessarily should have moved on from Tua, but I did say that they should have drafted Justin Fields instead of Jalen Waddle at 6. I said the same thing about the Giants. I was I like the trade. They got a good value for that pick, but why wouldn't you take Justin Fields? You don't have a quarterback. So I get frustrated by teams that, like the Bears with Trubisky. I said the same thing there. The Jags with Bortles. When your quarterback so clearly is not a good quarterback, you have to do everything you can until you get one of those guys. Like, why sit around and wait to see if Daniel Jones figures everything out? It's just frustrating because this team has some talent. I think they're well coached, but they're missing that quarterback identity, really. The last thing is, like, Saquon Barkley should probably demand a trade at this point. What a waste. I mean, seriously, what a waste from both sides. Like, the Giants draft a running back with the second overall pick when they don't have a quarterback, and then poor Saquon has to deal with that garbage team for his whole career. If I'm Saquon, I'm not signing an extension with the Giants. If they want to franchise tag you, fine, like, play on the tag, but don't sign a 6-year contract to get stuck here. Like, go enjoy your career. Go play for the frickin' Niners or a team that knows how to use you, because this is just embarrassing, man. He is the most talented running back in the NFL, and they can't get him. They can't get him looks in the run game without him getting swarmed right away. They can't get him. They can't be creative with him as a receiver. That's another really frustrating aspect here. I'm looking up at my Saquon Barkley poster on the wall, and I'm like, where's the guy from Penn State that no one could tackle? Man, frustrating. Like, seriously, I would talk to my agent and be like, can we get out of here? Like, all these players around the league are finding ways to get in better situations, and man, frustrating. So, San Francisco at Detroit is the final game. Again, I have not watched this one. Seems Jimmy G played pretty well. I've been saying, like, don't be surprised if Trey Lance is on the bench all year, because this team is going to put up points with Jimmy G because Kyle Shanahan is that special. Kittle was great in this game. Debo was great in this game. And the Niners offense rolled. Now, Detroit had kind of this miraculous comeback. I did see the comeback from Detroit. Like, on Sunday, I tuned in. So I didn't really see how the Niners got up this much early. Although I will say Elijah Mitchell, I know, went off. Excited to see his runs. I just blew like my entire free agent budget on Elijah Mitchell in a dynasty league, kind of hedging my take I had in my Niners deep dive, where I kind of floated it out there. I was like, Elijah Mitchell is super talented, probably was a better running back than a 6th-round pick, and I don't think that gap between him and Trey Sermon is that different. Now, Sermon didn't play in this game. I don't know if Sermon's hurt or what that deal was, but I said there's a chance that Elijah Mitchell is actually a better player than Trey Sermon. We'll see if that turns out. That'd be a heck of a take, and it was kind of a hot take, but we'll monitor that. So the only thing with the Niners is Jason Verrett got hurt. Sucks. But going back to that deep dive, I was talking about how he's got to stay healthy because this secondary is incredibly thin, and the secondary kind of got picked apart in the second half of that game after he went down, and that's a concern. The Niners defense has talent up front, and Fred Warner, of course, but that secondary can be one of the worst in the league without Verrett. So they got to figure some stuff out. It was a big injury. It was starting to feel like maybe Verrett could stay healthy and put it all together, but the poor guy the football gods said, we are going to tease you by giving you all this talent, but you're never going to get to use it. And that's really what it's come down to for Jason Verrett's career, which is just really unfortunate. As for the Lions, I like the resiliency. I've talked about Jared Goff kind of having a little bit more of a chip on his shoulder. It was fun to kind of see him play with some energy and get these random receivers going, lead a comeback. They end up falling short, of course, but was a fun game, fun comeback to see. Would have been a miraculous comeback. What were they down, like 24-plus points? Penei Sewell ended up playing at left tackle in this game. That will be interesting to see, like, who ends up playing left tackle when Taylor comes back, because Sewell really struggled at right tackle in the preseason. He played left tackle. And some guys, we kind of saw it with Alejandro Villanueva for the Ravens. Some guys just have, they're not ambidextrous or footrious, like really is what it is with tackle play, is the footwork. Sewell was dominant at left tackle, handling Bosa. So we'll see what they do there. I think it might be smart if at least try it. Like, it's not like you're any less invested in Sewell as you are in, it is Taylor, right? I feel bad I can't remember the left tackle's name because he's a good player. He's a really good player. He's really highly paid. So, I don't know. I think it might be smart to put Taylor at right tackle and Sewell at left. I'm just intrigued to see kind of how they handle that situation. So that is all of it for the game breakdowns. We are now going to get into the Patreon mailbag. We currently have 26 messages in my inbox. So let's get into it. A lot of mailbag questions here. Let's go. Okay, from Matthew. Taylor Decker, thank you, chat. Also, you guys can leave super chats, and I will answer your questions via super chat as well, via the live YouTube feed here. But a reminder that if you sign up on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, you can get access to submit questions every week to the show. Here we go. From Matthew. Would I ever consider being a guest on an NFL show? Yeah, 100%. Come find me. He suggests NFL Live, The Herd. I don't know if I'm big enough for those, but yeah, 100% would go on a show like that. From Nathan, what would be your top 5 receiving trios in the NFL? I'm just going to do top 3 for the sake of pacing. So this, by his question, includes tight ends, but excludes running backs. Well, this is always tough. Like, do you take a team like Hill and Chiefs with like Hill and Kelsey, even if the third is Mecole Hardman, because those top 2 are so good? That's always kind of tough. But let's just stick with true trios. So let's just go by division. NFC North, you're ruling those guys out. NFC East, there's nobody. Oh, Cowboys, easily. I mean, I don't even need to run through it. I mean, Cowboys and Bucks, for sure. Just their 3 receivers. You got to go with them. And then San Francisco, I think with Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle would be a great option there. I think Cincinnati, with how Chase looked week 1, is in the mix there. So I might be discrediting someone. I think Metcalf, Lockett, and Gerald Everett looks phenomenal. So I think that's like 5 right there. I'm probably forgetting people. The Rams have a really good trio. So, good question. From Donovan Dorsha, what's been my best and worst draft take? Well, my Herbert and Baker takes, big L's. I'll own those. I completely missed on Burrow's on Baker. Did I say Burrow? I meant Baker. Baker's arm talent, completely missed on that. I was still getting started on YouTube. I was trying to be a little bit bold. I said that was like the worst draft pick ever or something, like just terrible take. Like, I don't think I would make that take nowadays. Herbert, I thought he was Trubisky. I thought he wasn't a good decision maker, was kind of sporadic under pressure, and he's just been honestly, just a completely different player in the pros than, like, his Oregon tape was not good. It simply was not good. But he just was a different player in the NFL. So those are really my 2 worst draft takes. My best, I get a lot of like small ones. Like, I predicted the Steelers to draft Deontay Johnson with the pick that they traded away Antonio Brown for. Like, you know, Antoine Winfield last year. Like, I have a lot of little takes that I'm really proud of. But my biggest one was I was pounding the table that Kyler Murray was going to be the number 1 pick before anybody. Like, I got into his tape pretty early that year. And this was when, like, I would say 90+% of people said Kyler Murray was going to be a baseball player and not play football. And that was because the other 10% that thought he was going to play football thought he was a 2nd or 3rd round prospect. And literally, like, right around the end of that December, I watched his tape because he wasn't really getting all that much draft hype because he had been drafted by the A's and everyone thought he was going to go play baseball. He was like the number 6 overall pick. Kyler Murray we're talking about. He was like the number 6 overall pick by the Oakland A's. So everyone's like, oh yeah, he'll go play baseball. I had the take in my first mock draft before I had heard it from anybody. After I watched like 6 or 7 games from Kyler, I was like, no, this dude is special. Like, he is a first overall pick good. And this was when most people were saying second, third round for Kyler if he plays football. And I'm like, no way. This guy is on a different level, especially in that draft class where like Daniel Jones and Haskins is like, there is no freaking way Kyler Murray is going to go and ride school buses for 3 years for AA baseball teams to maybe make it in baseball when he could be starting for the Arizona Cardinals tomorrow. And that was the other thing was I said the Cardinals were going to draft him. When Josh Rosen was their dude, they had just traded up in the first round to take him. So that was like bold call nation, like putting it on the line. Like this dude is special. And about 2 weeks later, he was like, yeah, I'm playing football. And people started mocking him in the first round. And then another week later, it was like, oh, crap, Arizona's going to draft him. And they're going to move on from Rosen. So that's why I got the Kyler jersey in the back, because I do think that was my best draft take. From Christoph Hare, how confident am I in Brandon Staley to build a new defense with the Chargers? As a Rams fan, I noticed that his defensive scheme was heavily built around Ramsey and Donald. Seeing that Derwin and Joey Bosa obviously are beasts but have different traits, I wonder how you could bring out the best possible versions of them. Great question. Brandon Staley's obviously a better defensive mind than me. That's why he's a young defensive head coach, and I'm not. But I think we saw it. I mean, Derwin James playing that star role as that kind of do-it-all strong safety was incredible. His ability, we talked about how the Packers who run this defense and how they weren't closing, right? If you have a guy like that in this defense, which is, Ramsey did a little bit of that last year, but not as much. And we talked about how if you throw the ball underneath against these cover 4 defenses, it's a little easier to kind of get some space underneath and make these guys come down and tackle you. Well, who you don't want coming down to tackle you is Derwin James. So I think him playing that kind of hybrid safety role where he can go high, he'll rotate down, like the creativity they use with their safeties is phenomenal. So I think that's step one. And then they can use Bosa not as Aaron Donald, but like you can get I don't even want to say comparable level pass rush because Donald is just so different, but Bosa is a game-wrecking guy up front that will allow you to go, 4-man rushes when you want because he can help you generate a pass rush. So I really think the scheme's going to be very similar, and that's really what it comes down to. They'll use their star players in different ways for sure, but that's what a good coach does, right? He's not going to take Joey Bosa and put him in Aaron Donald's role because he wants Aaron Donald. He knows he doesn't have Aaron Donald, so he's going to let Bosa be Joey Bosa. I will say I'm trying to recall, maybe chat can help me out here. I'm pretty sure he allowed Bosa to play with his hand in the dirt, and that was something I talked about in my Chargers deep dive was it's kind of weird Bosa as a 3-4 outside linebacker, and I was like, I just wanted to make sure that Staley was going to allow him to, put his hand in the dirt, because I think his get-off is one of his most elite traits, and I can actually check this right now. But Bosa's get-off, because he's not, like, fast, right? But his explosiveness off the ball is unbelievable. Like, his just first-step get-off is insane, but it's a little bit harder to have that at your disposal when you're playing in a 2-point stance as an outside linebacker. So let's see here. Bosa played, 22 out of his 45 snaps, he had his hand in the dirt. So I like that he did that. Don't be confined to the whole, we're a 3-4 team, like, we got to keep our edge guys as outside linebackers. No, Joey Bosa is not a true 3-4 outside linebacker. So adapt your scheme, make it work. Great job, Brandon Staley. From Adam, do you think they will ever build a roof on Lambeau Field? No, never. Next question. It's not going to happen. The tradition there is just too great. From Ben, that actually I need to revisit. That is not a mailbag question. Okay, from Nick, settle an argument for me. A friend of mine believes the college football national championship can put up a good game against the worst team in the NFL. I said hell no. Look, I mostly agree with you. but sometimes the worst team in the NFL just like doesn't give a damn. And in the case of Alabama, where everyone on that team is going to be a pro player anyway, I think like the Houston Texans. Let's say their season gets derailed and these veterans kind of stop playing with the energy they played, and it's week 13 and they're 1-12. Like, I think Alabama could hang. Now, I think Houston would be like 10 to 14 point favorites, but a team that's like that really clicks together, that in a lot of cases is going to have better players, like receiver, quarterback, hell, their offensive line could be better. Like, there's going to be position groups on an Alabama, and this only applies to Alabama, by the way. Or like LSU also was like loaded, but there's going to be position groups that they're actually better at. Like Trey Young looks insane at quarterback for Alabama. So I still think Houston would be favored in that game, but I think it's a fun conversation. I think you could get an upset and they win like 31-30, but just the size of NFL athletes and like the experience, it would probably win through. But it's fun to entertain for sure. From Nicholas Craig, not much of a question, more of a hot take, but we as lovers of football sport like talking more about football than actually watching football itself. I bet there are people out there. I would prefer to watch football than talk about football, but I do love talking about football. You know what? That take is growing on me very quickly. People do love to talk their football. 100%. From Jake, trying not to overreact to the Cowboys-Bucks game, but do you see Dallas having a better season than I initially predicted if Kellen Moore has full control of the offense and the defense plays their heart out every game like they did against Tampa? I mean, what did I predict them? 9 wins? I still think they're about a 9 to a 10 win team. I'm still worried about the defense, and they just had Lyle Collins get suspended. I still think they're about a 9 to a 10 win team. I really don't think that game changed too much of my opinion on Dallas. I knew their offense was going to be good, but maybe like slightly, like, yeah, the defense maybe looks a little bit better. Like the front seven, Micah Parsons looks sweet. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to stand by kind of where I was at with Dallas for the most part heading into the year. From Hunt, how much of a fleece was the B.J. Hill trade? Oh my God, dude. He was great. B.J. Hill had 2 sacks on 2 pressures for the Bengals, granted against the Vikings' interior offensive line. But I said it when it happened. The Giants traded B.J. Hill, who's like a good defensive tackle, like a starting caliber defensive tackle, certainly a valuable player, for Billy Price, who stinks. Billy Price hasn't been able to start on the Bengals, and when he has, he's been just a turnstile. I could not believe that trade. That was a huge fleece by the Bengals to get a real starting caliber D tackle for someone that they were probably going to cut in Billy Price. From Joe Woods just said, "Who dat?" Poking fun at the Saints beating the Packers. The Dome Patrol. Another Saints question. How did the Saints shut down Davante Adams so effectively? Watching Lattimore match Adams' cuts on replay so perfectly was a thing of beauty, but I doubt that's what happened the entire game. I did notice they were doubling him, but, Lattimore had a great game, and they doubled him. And that's really what it came down to. I mean, this is what the Bucs did in the NFC Championship, was they ran man coverage a ton. They just did a straight-up double on Davante Adams and dared anybody else to beat him. And this was another example of the Packers receivers not being able to do that. I couldn't believe that they didn't put Randall Cobb and Amari Rodgers in the game more, because that was my big thing with the Packers. It was like, you finally have 2 receivers that can run quick routes and get open against press man coverage, and they're still putting Allen Lazard in the slot. Like, what is that for a game plan? It made no sense to me. But yeah, Adams, he just like any receiver, like, you got to have real options outside of him. And I think the Packers have that in Cobb, who actually was okay when he played. And I'd like to see what Amari Rodgers can do. But yeah, you can go man coverage, double team on Adams, and there's just not a whole lot he can do. He'll still beat you occasionally, but that's kind of the Bucs formula that the Saints were deploying there. From Eric, Well, that sucked, talking about my Colts. I'm especially surprised at how we lost. The O-line looked like the luck days. Do other teams with top-notch O-lines ever have crappy days like that, or is the line just not the unit we thought they were? Well, it seemed to me like the tackles were getting beat, and I've kind of had to tell some Colts fans that Braden Smith is not an elite right tackle. I think Braden Smith just had a bad day, and when he has a bad day, and your left tackle is currently, who even is it starting at tackle for the Colts right now? Let's look this up too, because they're waiting on Fisher to get back, but he's not healthy. So the left tackle is Julian Davenport. So just looking at the PFF grades here, like Quentin was good, Kelly was good, Mark Lewinsky was, hit or miss. But yeah, Julian Davenport, PFF grade, pass block grade of 35, Braden Smith 40. So I think what it comes down to is your left tackle sucks, and Braden Smith, who's not an elite right tackle but a very good one, just had a really bad day. I would say that tackles in the Braden Smith tier do tend to have some bad days in there. So it was definitely a bad day at the office for the Colts O-line. But I will also tack on top of that, part of making an O-line look good is the quarterback doing things to help the O-line, navigating pressure, getting rid of the ball when they need to. And that's been a big problem with Wentz, is he has not helped his O-line with how long he holds the football. So that's another part of it. But definitely the Colts O-line didn't play well either. From Ash, how would I solve the Lions cornerback situation? 2, is it fair to stick Okudah with the bust label? So I hate calling players that can't stay healthy busts, because it's just out of their control, right? Like, obviously Okudah had a down rookie year, tough COVID season, impossible season for defenses. Rookies across the league really struggled. I wasn't the most biggest Okudah fan in the world. I thought he'd be better than he was, but I think he's got time. It's one injury. He should be able to bounce back. Hopefully he can stay healthy the rest of his career, and then we don't need to, blame injuries if he is a bust. But it's definitely not looking good. That injury was devastating. And then how would I solve the Lions cornerback situation? There's not a lot you can do. I mean, the free agents available right now, not exactly the best pickings. Maybe you could bring Quentin Dunbar back. I don't know. You're probably not a team that wants to trade for corners, and it's not like a lot of teams are selling their cornerbacks in week 2 anyway. You're just, I hate to say it, but you're just kind of screwed. The Lions cornerbacks, which sucks because Aaron Glenn, I'm sure, would love to have some better defensive talent to work with there. Okay, from Patrick, with Fitzpatrick expected to miss half the season, do I think Washington should sign Cam Newton, given that he's a familiar style with the system, or just give the keys to Taylor Heineke? I get it. I wouldn't personally. I think you have really good vertical weapons. Cam Newton, to me, can be good in the right offense, but I really think that Washington has the weapons to push the ball downfield, and Heineke actually has had some juice. I mean, if Heineke really sucks and you're not getting Fitzpatrick back anytime soon, then maybe in a couple weeks I would sign Cam Newton. But personally, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, and I don't think it'd be a bad move or anything. But also with Rivera's stance on vaccinations and how pissed he is about his team not getting vaccinated, I doubt he wants a quarterback that's an anti-vaxxer too. So I think that plays into factor too. And I think there was already kind of maybe, I could be wrong here, but I think there was maybe something there between Rivera and Cam that they just weren't on the same page. From Michael showing up. Michael was the first person in the chat here, ready to go. I don't know if you're still here, Michael, but what's up? Not even a question, but he just said, to be fair, no one could have seen the improvement in the Raiders defense. Who could have? And to be fair, Andre James hasn't filled me with confidence. There's actually something above that. Yeah, this is a long message. So I'll try and revisit this, Michael. I don't know if this is a mailbag question, but thank you for watching the show and thank you for your patronage. Raiders defense, I don't think even the biggest Raiders optimist could have seen that performance by the defense. And Andre James stinks. From Loomer, been thinking about the Bears, and I was wondering what is the difference between the Bears since 2018, Bears since 2018 compared to the 20-13, 20-17 Kansas City Chiefs. The defense carried the team, but they always made the playoffs, including a first-round bye in 2016. Not a big difference. I remember that Chiefs team being loaded on defense with Houston and Tamba Hali, Eric Berry, Marcus Peters, like that. It's funny how the Chiefs used to be quarterbacked by Alex Smith and just a defensive-minded team. There's not a huge difference, especially with Andy Dalton in there for the Bears. There's definitely some parallels there. Great pass rush, maybe. I'd have to revisit the Chiefs to say not a great secondary, but definitely very comparable teams. I'm with you on that. From Josh, if you were to put CMC and Alvin Kamara on your wide receiver list, what tiers would they be? Ooh. Like, if they just made full conversions to receivers, I think McCaffrey would be at the, because I had an elite slot tier or like a alpha slot tier, like the best slot receivers had their own tier. McCaffrey would be at the top of that list. Maybe would I have Cooper Kupp and McCaffrey? That's tough, very different, but he'd be right at the top of the slot receivers list. Kamara, I don't know about Kamara. I feel like Kamara, the value he brings in the receiver is much more exclusive to the running back position. Because when I think about Kamara's ability as a receiver, like, yeah, he's a good route runner. He's got good hands. But I don't think it's, like, better than most slot receivers like I do with Christian McCaffrey. I think in Alvin Kamara's case, it's like, this dude is so damn hard to tackle, catching checkdowns and screens and all that stuff. I feel like it's a little different with him. So he probably wouldn't have been all that high just as a receiver. Kind of different there. But McCaffrey's like true route running is unbelievable. Him running option routes out of the backfield is so fun. Like, linebackers just have no idea what's coming. From Jacob, with no studs and duds this week, who are a few players that surprised me and a few that disappointed? Max Crosby would have been stud of the week. I would have had to write a Max Crosby apology form, and maybe I still will in 2 weeks. So he comes to my mind. Brian Edwards really lived up to the hype. A couple Raiders, really. Cam Sutton for the Steelers played really well. It's hard. I really need to like prep for a question like that. But I appreciate the effort to kind of get a little studs and duds action as a part of the podcast here. I'm trying to come up with some more names for you, but maybe Cam Hayward would get a boost. Cam Hayward was phenomenal for the Steelers. Jameis comes to mind, impressed. As far as disappointing, hard to like bash on a guy after one rough week. Alejandro Villanueva, rough week there. I'll just leave Alejandro Villanueva out to dry, I guess. From Will Smithy, what do I think the Dolphins should do with Tua? I think they should move on from Tua. I really do. I'd play him. I'd play him throughout the year. If I'm winning a ton of games, I guess Brissett's fine, but like, I don't know. I would maybe entertain quarterback trades. I mean, definitely monitor the Deshaun Watson situation. That's for damn sure. If they can get, if they're cool with it, like the off-field stuff sucks. And I don't even know how you begin considering bringing a Deshaun Watson in. But if the owner is cool with it and he wants to do it, and you're winning games despite Tua, like, I'd do it. But even like a Mariota or like, I would just think about other trades. Maybe a Cam Newton would be Miami. I don't know. But I've personally seen enough from Tua he can totally prove me wrong. And I think I've shown on this channel that if someone proves me wrong, I will happily admit I think Tua is a great dude, and I would love to see him succeed. But when I watch him play football, that is not a starting quarterback. I'm sorry. So I would do what I could to improve that. And I don't think Jacoby Brissett is either. So personally, I'm starting to, hope Tua works out, but prepare as if he's not going to. From Dennis, the Bengals won a close game. I'm higher on their defense, especially D-line, than I've been before the season. I'm going to pump the brakes on the Bengals' defensive line because they played the Vikings' offensive line. And they play the Bears' offensive line this week. So if they have a couple good weeks, I'm still going to be like, let's see it against a real O-line, and then we can talk about Trey Hendrickson looking good, some of these other guys. B.J. Hill had a good game. We'll see. It's Vikings O-line. Most D-lines look pretty good. From Oscar, little bummed about no studs and duds for a few weeks, but huge congrats on everything coming up. I appreciate it. Yep, studs and duds week 3 is going to be pretty epic. It'll be worth the wait, I promise. Would Jalen Hurts have gone up this week? Yes, I would say probably a +1 or a +2 for Jalen Hurts. It's tough for quarterbacks to get anything more than a +1 in a single week. He didn't like push the ball downfield a ton, so that'd be my only hold up there. But yeah, we talked about him earlier. I was impressed by Jalen Hurts. He officially has my attention. Talk about me admitting when I was wrong. Like I thought he was like a 4th or 5th round quarterback. Like he's a better quarterback than Tua for sure. Brandon, was there anything I saw on film with Braden Smith? We only had one starter out in Eric Fisher, so I'm wondering if Steelers' defensive line Seattle's defensive line took a big step up, or if our line just sucks now. I didn't watch Braden Smith like particularly closely, and I don't know exactly what went wrong there. So I unfortunately don't have a great answer for you on that one, but there's definitely some worry from Colts fans on Braden Smith there. I'm not going to say I'm worried about him. I've always felt like Braden Smith is a really good run blocker who just isn't like an elite pass protector. He's very good, but he's a guy that if he goes against a lengthy, powerful guy like Alton Robinson or Darrell Taylor, like he can lose those matchups. I'd have to look at his arm length, but I would speculate that he probably has shorter arm length and struggles with power. But I need to watch the film to really confirm that. Let's do that right now. Let's look up Braden Smith's arm length. I bet it's at like 33 inches, and that's why he was a guard coming out. Let's do a little research on the fly. Braden Smith, 32.5-inch arms. So, again, I need to confirm the tape on this one, but I would speculate that 33 inches is usually like the far end cutoff for arm length, and Braden Smith at 32.25. Darrell Taylor was drafted for his power and length. Same thing with Alton Robinson. So if he, goes against a lengthy, powerful guy like that, he's going to have a hard time getting his hands inside on that guy because they're just going to be able to put their hands inside. So again, I need to confirm the tape, but based on the physical matchup there, that would explain it a little bit, but I certainly wouldn't panic. From Connor Lee. What's up, Connor? The Saints' run D looked good as always against the Packers. Why are they so good at run D every single year? Frickin' who's the Saints' defensive coordinator? He's got to be old. Dennis Allen he's only 48. The Saints have been like such a physical run defense for the last 3 or 4 years. They really struggled defensively a few years ago, but man, you're right. They are really good. You got Cam Jordan, who's just a monster on the edge, so it's tough for an outside zone team like that to get the edge. You got Davenport. Demario Davis, dude, is so good against the run. They got Quan Alexander with sideline-to-sideline speed, and they're good at finding guys like David Onyemata, Shai Tuttle. They get enough interior guys that they don't stink in there. So, I don't know. They deserve a lot of credit for it. That's for damn sure. But run defense is a team effort, and it's about coaching and scheme and discipline, and they've got it. I just saw in the chat, Joseph says DeMarcus Lawrence has a broken foot. That is definitely too bad. Definitely too bad. Big blow for the Cowboys. From Jose, we got 2 more questions here. Do I think the Cards defense is legit or just week 1 stuff? I think there's an element of legitimacy to what happened there because the pass rush is sustainable. Those are players that have done it, right? JJ and Chandler Jones. I think Isaiah Simmons has all the talent to become like a real impact in that mid-level of the defense. Byron Murphy was my number 1 corner a couple years ago. He seems to be poised for a big step up. Like, they have the dudes, and they have a former head coach as their defense coordinator. So it's it could very well be legit. And if it is, that's a potential Super Bowl team. From Matthew Bell, last question. So I don't want to overreact to one game, but Carolina looks like a playoff team. Okay, we'll see if you can sell me here. Darnold played really well. CMC was unstoppable. Derek Brown and Shaq Thompson looked great. Burns and Reddick were chasing Wilson all game. What do you think? Overreaction to week 1 or legitimate playoff chance? Well, that's a different... Legitimate chance at the playoffs is a little different than just saying they're a playoff team. I agree. They looked really good. It was also the Jets. They play the Saints this week. We'll see. I love that young defense. And if they play defense like that every week and Darnold can just not make mistakes and move the ball, I agree. They have a good chance of making the playoffs as a wild card. They're not going to take down the Bucs in that division, but yeah, they could win 10 games, get the 7 seed. That's probably a best case scenario, but definitely a team that I've believed in, but I've been waiting to see it. And this was like the first time I've been like, maybe not the first time. There were some moments last year that led to me really liking them, but just an all-around good week for the Panthers. Nice step up, and they got to continue building off of it. And that's it. We are done with the live show. That puts us at, I don't even know, 2 hours, just about 2 hours. So that's going to do it for this week's Fully Inflated Football live podcast. Thank you, everybody who joined us here live. You can expect and count on this podcast every day, not every day, I would go crazy, every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Going to look just like this throughout the season. And remember, use that promo code FranchiseGuy on Magic Spoon. Check out my Patreon if you want to submit questions to the show. Appreciate you guys for watching. Appreciate the patrons for the support. And we will see you guys mid next week for my power rankings that normally come out on on Tuesday mornings. Probably going to be either Wednesday night or Thursday morning for next week's power rankings because I will be out of town. But thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your night, and peace out.